Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hey, welcome to the show. So hopefully everybody is doing well today. So I just want to start off by saying that I made a post on Facebook about the school system, and I had heard that there was something going on politically with the school system, but I was unaware of exactly what was going on. So I wasn't thinking about that when I made the post. And actually, you know, the feedback wasn't really, I don't think it was really politically motivated, which was a nice change. But it did get me thinking. So I looked, and yes, there is something going on in the U.S. Educational system right now. You know, so I looked at the current administration, what they put out, their media said as to what they were doing and why. And I read that over, and then I read over the other media side that's against the current administration, and read as to why they said it was wrong. And then I formulated my own personal opinion on that. And because that's what I do. I figure, you know, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Both sides are lying. And most of the truth is hidden anyway. So none of us actually know truly what's going on. But that's how I like to get, that's what I call keeping up on things. I like to have some vague idea what's going on. I don't like forming opinions because I don't think I have enough information. I don't think anybody actually has access to the information, including 3/4 of the people involved. So I don't take it that seriously. But I do like to look at both sides and then come to my own opinion about it. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, that this is not politically motivated. Most of what I'm talking about has to do with my personal experience in the school system growing up, my experience as a parent with a child in the school system growing up, and working other people's experiences that I've been exposed to my entire life, and working with people for the last 20 years and their experiences. So, and really to me, it's the diving into this stuff and really trying to understand both sides and why it may or may not work, and contemplating and things like that, and diving into it from a spiritual perspective. That's where I think I get the more valuable information. So this is not politically motivated in any way, shape, or form. I just want to get that out of the way. The other thing I want to touch on is that this is not an attack, especially on teachers. I think that there's many good teachers out there. My experience is the majority of them weren't very good. They weren't very good at dealing with children. They might have been good at teaching people. But I think if your job is to teach children, it's a pretty important aspect to be able to interact with children. And of course, what I mean by that is the difficult, because you don't have to learn how to deal with somebody that just does what they're told all day. You know, if you're a teacher and 3/4 of your classroom just does what they're told, you say, sit down, stop talking, open your book to page 32, and start reading, and they do that, well, guess what? You don't have to really study childhood education or emotionality or psychology or anything else to deal with 3/4 of those kids. They just did what you said. Job done. But it's the other children that are affected. And I think it's the school system is just one system within our societal systems, where I believe the way they're set up is I don't know if I was going to say the way they're set up is with good intentions. I don't know that that's true. I don't know what the intentions are, to be honest with you, because I don't know how deep the dysfunction is and how conscious people are of it, because it's been going on for so long. I mean, quite, I just rewatched The Shack the other day, and part of in that movie it says, well, judging this person, how far back do we go if we're judging people for their behaviors? Doesn't the brokenness go all the way back to Adam and Eve, right? So I believe that there's some truth to that, whether you believe in Adam and Eve or not. It's just, our brokenness, our dysfunction, the way we've been living has been going on for tens of thousands of years. So I don't know what the intentions were when these systems were set up by the people who set them up. There might have been some negative intentions in there, but the system is good enough to where, whether it had good intentions or bad intentions, the system has to work for at least a small amount of the majority. And then whoever doesn't fit into the system, we make some of them fit in, and they shut up and do what they're told after enough discomfort. So now we're probably up to 3/4 of the people that are either like the system or function well within the system. And then, like half of them, and then another 25% that it's close enough to where they're not getting nourished. They're not becoming who they could be. The system doesn't really work for them. It doesn't cause so much trauma that it really hinders them to too much. And, there's not a lot of suffering, or there's not a lot of attention put on that group, I think. And then there's the other 25% that the system just doesn't work for at all. And those, in most societal systems, especially schools, we label those people as having disorders and problems, and that there's something wrong with them because they don't fit into the system. The fact that we're all individuals, we forget about that. And if you talk to people about, if you try to say, yeah, but like, look at these kids, like these kids are they're being mentally and emotionally abused by a system. They're being told that they're bad, that there's something wrong with them on a daily basis. Do you know what that does to a child's self-esteem? That was one of the most pivotal moments in my parenting life. When my son was young, when he started school, he was ADHD off the freaking charts. I mean, the teacher, the principal told me he was the number one problem in the school in first grade. So we start going down the ADHD route and getting a therapist and talking to this and trying to work with the school to figure out these systems. And I had no custodial rights, so I had to watch my mouth. I didn't have any power at that time to do what I thought was right. It was really up to my ex-wife to even allow me into the school meetings, and she did not want me there. So I couldn't cause too many waves, or else she would have tossed me out. So, they would go in, and I'm like, okay, let's set up these. You guys say you have these systems in place. Let's set them up, and let's do this stuff before you start, labeling my kid as having a disorder and pumping them with medication. So we set up a system, and then we go back, like whatever, 4 or 5 weeks later or 2 months later or something. And we sit down, and we're like, okay, let's go over everything. And I'm like, well, I didn't get like the teachers were supposed to be giving me this, and I wasn't getting them. And like that, what's going on? And they're like, yeah, well, we'll just go to stage 2, because stage 1 didn't work. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What, like, we set up stage 1, but to my knowledge, it wasn't implemented. Like, you didn't do what was included in stage 1. So how can we say it didn't work and let's go to stage 2 if we didn't even implement stage 1? And they're like, well, it's just, you don't understand. It's difficult for the teachers because they have other students to deal with. I'm like, what? Like, we had a meeting. The teachers were there. Before we said we were going to implement this, we got the approval of each of the teachers that were doing this and the people overseeing it. So everybody was on the same page. They all said that they could implement it. They all said it wasn't too much work for them. They all said that they would do it, but then they didn't follow through. They didn't do it. And then now you just want to go to step 2 because he's one step closer to getting pumped with medication, and you guys didn't even try the things that you said you were going to try. And that's, that went over like a fart in church. So then, I had to see where that was going, and I needed to pull back a little bit because, they went right to stage 2 and there was nothing I could do about it. And this is advanced. Like, when I was in school, they didn't diagnose ADHD. So I was just a big pain in the ass. Now, this is the advanced version. And there were many, but the pivotal moment was when we went back to the therapist, and I was talking to her, and she was saying, we're talking about the medication, and I'm like, I just want to try. I want to exhaust the other resources. I want to try dietary stuff. I want to try actual trying things in school to see if they'll work. And if they don't work, then fine. But I don't like the idea of putting drugs inside of my child. So I would actually like to try things before that to see if they're necessary. And I'm having a hard time with that process. And I'm frustrated. And the therapist looked at me and she said, do you have any idea how often per day that your son hears his name in a negative context? And I don't even think she finished the sentence. And I flashed back through my childhood and I went, oh my God. Yes. I know exactly what he's dealing with. And I also understand exactly what it's doing to his self-esteem, because that's what I experienced. That's what I experienced my entire school career, is people telling me, just using my name in a negative context, just saying your name in a particular energy. You know what that does to a small child when it's happening to them every day, all day? Glenn, stop it. Glenn, turn around. Glenn, stop talking. Glenn. And half the time, they wouldn't even turn their backs around. They just assume it was me. And half the time it wasn't. So I was getting called out for stuff that I wasn't even doing, which bothered me. But then if I ever said anything, they were like, well, usually it's you, so that's good enough. So they just excuse their own poor behavior, and it's just like, and I was a child. I understand that I was making their lives more difficult and their jobs more difficult. I understand that. But this is what I mean when they're not trained in child psychology, because there were a few teachers, probably 3 or 4, probably 3 or 4 that really stand out. I'm sure there were a few others, to be fair, but there were about 3 or 4 that actually understood children. And you know what they did when I was acting out? They talked to me like a human being. And every single time I changed my behavior. We've proven by now, this is to me one of my biggest problems with the school system, is that we have proven scientifically through research that all the intellectuals say is important. We got to trust the science and we have to research. You don't understand, Glenn. We can't just float around on spiritual woo-woo stuff. This has to be practical stuff. We've done it. We've researched all this stuff, and we've proven that negative behavior is not permanently eradicated through negative reinforcement. It's not. It doesn't change negative behavior. The only thing that changes negative behavior is positive reinforcement. It's the only thing that doesn't, and we've proven this through studies. But it's too much of a pain in the ass to change a school system into something that actually might work, or to change our penal institution system, our prison system, into a system that might actually work. Instead, we rationalize it and go, well, what are we supposed to do? And then I'm not even going to say what people say after that, because it's something freaking stupid. Like, oh, we were supposed to open the doors and let all the prisoners run free and kill everybody because Glenn doesn't like the prison system. No, genius. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you live within a society and you would like to live in a good society, and you research things and you find out that the way you're doing them causes more problems just through scientific research, and then you look at the system and you see the evidence of that, like us building more and more prisons, more and more people being in prison than ever. If our prison system worked, there would be less people, or maybe staying the same. It's dramatically growing. So we don't want to change what we're doing. It doesn't work. It's dysfunctional, but we're not willing to change it. And it's the same thing with the school system. It doesn't work. But we're too lazy to change it. It's much easier to label all the people who don't fit into the system as the problem. They're the problem. Okay, well, let's see what happens when that's what you do. So if you have 50% of the people in the educational system that are actually, for the most part, flourishing from it, right? So you've got 50% flourishing, and then you've got 25% that aren't flourishing. That they're not being fed by the system. They don't really fit into the system, but they're quiet personalities, or the suffering isn't that immense where they make a big deal out of it. They drink the Kool-Aid and understand that this is just how life is, and they fall in line. Now, they're not nourished. They don't become who they're supposed to be, but nobody even knows about those people because they don't make a big stink about it. Then you got the other 25% of the people that don't fit into it. Those people aren't getting nourished, and you're messing with them hardcore. Now, are there some of them that are going to look at the system and go, I don't fit into the system. It doesn't make me a bad person. I'm fine. I'm just going to play the game and go to school until I graduate, or maybe quit early and get my GED or whatever, but it's not going to affect my self-worth. Yeah, you're going to have a small percentage of that, but the majority of that percentage is going to be traumatized by their school experience, which I was, and I don't use traumatized easily. I think it's an overused word, but when I go back, and I've gone back in meditations, and experienced the immense emotional suffering that I experienced because of the system. And the educational system is not just the educational system. It's the life experience system for children throughout their developmental years. So from 5 or 6 years old until 18, they are in that system every day. Boom, 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 boom. Do you have any idea how many times I heard my name in a negative context? Per day, it had to have been, I don't know, maybe 10. I mean, probably a dozen. On a bad day, it could be 2 dozen, could be 3 or 4 dozen. Do you know what that does to a child when they're being told by the people who are supposed to represent? They're the ones that are supposed to know what's going on. They're the ones in power. They're the ones in charge. And they're telling this little child on a daily basis over and over that they don't fit in, that there's something wrong with them, and that they're bad. Over and over and over and over again. By the time I hit 7th grade, I was like, I really wanted to be good. I tried. Like, I would sit there, I would be like, I'd give myself pep talks and try to stay focused. And then next thing you know, I'm distracted and looking out a window, getting yelled at again, or talking to somebody, or twiddling my thumbs and getting yelled at for not paying attention. Like, do you have any idea? Constantly getting thrown out of class for not paying attention. You know, and of course there was times where I was disruptive, talking to other kids, distracting them because I was so bored out of my mind. You know, so it's difficult. It's the system is flawed, seriously flawed. You know, by the time I hit 7th grade, I was like, I really wanted to be good. So I was like, you know, I'd really try to focus and then I'd fail. And so by the time I hit 7th grade, I was like, Glenn, like, seriously, dude, like you have been busting your ass trying to pay attention. Some of the, not every day, but you know, as things got worse and as I got older, I was like, you know, let's give this the old college try. Come on, Glenn. And I'd really try. And then I'd be off somewhere back at sitting outside the office in trouble. And I'm like, oh my God. And after a while, I'm like, what's worse than the pressure that the teachers and my parents put on me was the pressure that I put on myself, you know? So, and, you know, one thing I want to say about my parents is, like, my parents didn't understand me any better than teachers understood me. My parents, like, they kind of thought the same way. My sister was older. It worked, you know, for the most part with her. Like, so not only did they have their way of thinking that worked for them, but then they had my sister that was older that it seemed to work for her as well. So the only conclusion for them to come to was that the way they were doing things worked. Even, and I was the problem. I understand that, especially after being a parent myself. You know, there was times when, you know, when you've got a kid, you know, probably any kid, but then you got a high energy kid that's ADHD, like it can be taxing at times, man. It can be exhausting and you can get tired as a parent. It's not easy, you know, just like for teachers, it's not easy. So what I want to say about my parents is that, like, I always knew that they loved me. Was I able to connect to them? No, not really. Not in that deep way that I wanted to. So, but like, you know, they were also in a sense part of the problem, because I was always in trouble with them too. I get in trouble at school, then I get in trouble with them. So I was getting it on both ends. But like, I remember when the teachers would make a comment about my parents, like being bad parents, that used to piss me off. I would unleash on teachers when they said that. And it happened several times. You know, teachers saying like, oh, you know, boy, your home life must be this, or your parents must be that because of my behavior. And I would unleash on them because I knew my parents were good parents and I knew that they loved me and I knew that they were trying really hard. I even knew that at a young age. Now, were they able to give me what I needed? No, they didn't know any better. And I don't blame them for that. I don't blame the teachers. Like, I mean, I get it now. I'm an adult, and I've woken up spiritually, and I've worked through all this stuff, all the resentments, towards these teachers and towards all this stuff. And there's probably a little bit left over, if I'm going to be honest. But 90% of it I've dealt with, so I understand. I'm not angry at anybody in particular. I just don't like the system. I don't like the system because it's damaging society. Like what we're not doing, I think, as a society is like I said, we look at the system, and when it seems to work for 75%, we go, good enough. I mean, there's no system that works for everybody, right? Hey, it's like, yeah, I get that, but is that going to be our litmus test for what we should be doing as a society? Because let's look at that and see how it's working. We've been doing it for quite a while now. And like I said, the prison system is a good example of it. What happens is you get more criminals in your society with that mentality. If you don't change things that you found out that don't work, your society suffers through it. And when you've got probably 50% of the kids going through a school system that do not get nourished through their formative years, that's going to affect your society. This is what I see as the problem. That's the real problem. Not that little Glenn didn't get love when he was a kid. It's that it's damaging our society, and we're pretending that we like to tell ourselves that having a system that works for most is the best we can do, and everything else and everything else is foolish. Well, it's not. We're seeing that now with some of the alternative schools popping up. And we have to make those options more available to more people, I think. Well, I know, but we'll see if that, we'll see how quickly that happens. So, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the system not working. So just to finish off my personal experience, it was like, when I was in 7th grade, and I couldn't measure up, finally I just went, well, I'm punished all the time. I'm in trouble all the time. What if I just took the pressure off of myself and just did whatever I wanted? Just not really worried about it, not really tried to be good. What if I just stopped trying to be good? And then I'm like, ooh, what does that look like? I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could just kind of do whatever I wanted. Like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Stuff that sounds fun. Like skipping school. I would never skip school. Like that sounds like the bad kids skip school, and then I heard some of my friends skipping school like within a week or two. And I was like, hey, can I go? They're like, sure. So I went with these two guys and we skipped school and we went down to this local, it was kind of like a man-made beach on a lake. We went there. We had the best day, man, the best day. It was so awesome. And like, I got in trouble, and I was like, my life didn't change. Like my life, I'm always in trouble. So like my life didn't change, and I just had a great day. So I was like, oh my God, I just found the secret. Like I figured it out. I don't feel all this pressure to be good because I took it off of myself. I'll just accept the fact that I'm a loser dirtbag that's never going to amount to anything, like everybody's been telling me for the last 7 years. And I'll just be like, okay, you're right. I give up. I give up trying to prove how good I am. I give up trying to pay attention. I give up trying to follow your rules. And you guys can just punish me like you always do anyway. And that's what I did. And my life didn't change. Now, it was a major problem for me because that was the catalyst to the rest of, that's when it all went downhill. because I had no fear of consequences. So it's like I was always punished anyway. So what's the difference? So like I probably got caught for 20% of the stuff that I did. 80% of the stuff I got away with and had a blast. And then the other 20%, yeah, I was in trouble regularly. So I was in trouble regularly when I was trying to do the right thing. So now I get to have a bunch of fun, do whatever the heck I want, whenever I want. I have all this pressure lifted off of me that I was imposing upon myself. And then the pressure that my parents and the school system was putting on me, I just didn't care. I just didn't let it bother me. So that, that was my outlook, which seemed really good at the time, right? I thought I found the perfect solution, or the best solution I could have. And I think I probably did, quite honestly. It was probably the best solution I could have found. However, the problem is that I had to accept in my own psyche that I was a dirtbag and a loser and was never going to amount to anything. I had to stop resisting that and just go, okay, you're right. I had to drink the Kool-Aid and just be like, all right, all the adults are right. You're right. I'm a loser. I get it. And that was the only way I could interact with that without it bothering me. So what did that do? Well, no fear of consequences and thinking that you're a loser. Geez, I wonder how that plays out in society. It was just as I got older, then instead of the school system, it was the police system and the court system that I dealt with. And it was the same thing. Oh, I'm a loser? Big surprise there. I've never heard that before. And how did I deal with this unconscious belief that I was a loser that I pretended to not let bother me? Through alcoholism for 20 years and depression and suicidal thoughts consistently and suicide attempts. That's how I dealt with it. And this is what we're doing to our society. It's not just me. Like maybe I was more of the extreme end. Like I would agree with that probably. If I had to take a guess, I would say that I was probably at the more extreme end. I was at the, I probably suffered when if you look at a system that's flawed and you understand that some of the kids are suffering because of it during their formative years, for me to be suicidal and depressed and alcoholic, it's probably towards the extreme, right? I was probably one of the ones that got hit the hardest by it. That's my experience. But there was plenty of other kids. I mean, all the time it was interesting. Like I don't know, around 6th, 7th grade, like where the teachers when you were young, the teachers actually tried to talk to you a little bit more. Like I remember 1st and 2nd grade where you had one teacher, and it seems to me my 3rd grade teacher was not good. And that's when I started hating school. But 1st and 2nd grade, I remember really liking school, and the teachers were really nice. They weren't yelling at me, calling me a loser and punishing me all the time. 3rd grade, it started. 4th grade was not good. And I went to a different school, a big school, and that was not good. 5th grade was medium. 6th grade, I really liked my main teacher. So I just liked her personality or whatever. I connected with her, and I wanted to please her because I liked her. So I would listen to her, and she didn't yell at me. She treated me like a human being. So that was a little bit better. But then I hit 7th grade, and then, it got really bad. 7th and 8th grade. Then I go to a new school in 9th grade, and I'm like, okay, new school, let's put a good foot forward at least. I wasn't going into high school. High school was 4 years. I had just gotten out of junior high. That was 2 years. So 4 years seemed like a long period of time. And I'm like, maybe I can fly into the radar for a while or something. I wasn't going into high school expecting to just start crap. I mean, from the amount of hell that I went through in junior high, like you don't want to experience that. I mean, even where I was mentally that I had kind of given up, I still didn't. I was still hoping that something might be a little bit better in high school. But you know what happened to me the first day of high school? I walked into a new school with all these older kids and these guys that were huge with beards and stuff. And it was a 4 years that I was going to be there. And I was like, I was 4'11", 100 pounds, nervous. And I go in and like, I forgot how many teachers I had, probably like somewhere around 5 to 7 teachers or something, for the different subjects and everything. And there were more than half, probably. There was more than half. So, if there was 7, there was at least 4 or 5. If there was 5, there was probably 3 or 4 that, as soon as we walked in first day of class, and they started looking at their attendance sheets to find out who was there. And they saw Glenn Ambrose, which is a lot of times the first name on a list or one of the first couple, because it starts with an A. As soon as they see Glenn Ambrose, they're like, "Oh, Glenn Ambrose, where are you?" "Okay, front and center, Mr. Ambrose. Yes, we've heard all about you. Yes, the teachers from junior high talk to the teachers in high school. So we know all about you. We're going to be keeping a special eye on you all year." And I'm going, "Oh no, here we go again." Like, I haven't even done anything yet. And these teachers already got my name and they're coming after me. So I was like, okay, jig is up, back to junior high techniques. The war is on. They've declared it. They told me, "You, Mr. Ambrose, I am coming after you because I know you're a problem. So you step out of line once and I'm coming." And I knew I was going to be stepping out of line. So I didn't do it on purpose. I would just wait and it would happen naturally, usually within the first week or two. And they would lean into me and try to embarrass me in front of the class, which is really good psychological technique. And I would lean right back in and say, "That's not how this is going to go. You fight with me, I'm going to go down swinging." That's how it was. Is like, all I had was my pride left. So I wasn't going to let these teachers embarrass me in front of the kids and tuck my tail between my legs. So as soon as they challenged me, I challenged them back and went at it. And it was not pretty for the rest of the year. And I had many teachers tell me that I was one of the worst students that they ever had, that they would never let me in their classroom again, not to sign up for their class next year because they taught and that great. I mean, and that was the nicer stuff that they said to me. This vicious, man. Like, to a kid, that's what irritates me, is like, I know I wasn't easy. I know that I was a problem, but I was also a child. And I wasn't treated like one. I wasn't even treated like a human being. I was treated like a pain in the ass. That's what I was treated like. I was treated like dirt and like crap. And then they wondered why I lived up to their expectations. It's like, this is what I mean by not the teachers not being trained in child psychology. The ones that, like, it's not rocket science. Like, when I was in high school, one of my, I would cheat on all my homework and just copy other people's homework. And I never took books home. I think junior year, I took my books home one night just to try it, because I was like, maybe I'll start like actually doing my homework and stuff. And I actually took my books out of my locker and brought them home with me. And I didn't open any of them. So the next day I just brought them back and I left them in my locker. So I never did any homework unless it was copied or cheated. I didn't pay attention. The smart teachers used to let me sleep in class because then I wasn't disrupting anything. That was kind of my rule. I was like, if you just leave me alone, let me sleep, or just don't come at me, I will just shut up. Like, I won't just, when I get older, I wasn't like talking in class so much. Like, I could control that a little bit better when I get older. So like my thing was like, I'm not going to start the fight, but as soon as it starts, I ain't going to stop swinging until it's over. So like, I would just shut up to the best of my ability until some teacher started coming after me, in front of the class. Or if they were picking on some other kid that like I knew wasn't going to defend themselves, like some kid that was quiet, good kid, but like maybe he didn't do well on his homework, or those kids that kind of struggle. And they're not bad kids. They don't disrupt anybody. They don't cause any problems. They're just struggling with the work. And then these teachers come after them and just start laying into them and trying to embarrass them in front of the class. Like, I would unleash on a teacher for doing that to a kid. Because I was like, I can take this teacher on, and I can handle whatever repercussions come my way. But this kid can't handle it. That's the other stuff that I saw that was disgusting regularly. I forgot where I was going. Maybe I just ended. So this is the type of stuff. Oh, it was a child psychology. So I remember this teacher in high school. So I was cheating on my English vocab homework in homeroom, just copying somebody's. So I had it done when I went in there, and my homeroom teacher caught me and said they were going to tell my English teacher. I'm like, yeah, okay. So they tell the English teacher, and I walk in, sit in class, and the English teacher comes over and says, Glenn, can I talk to you for a minute out in the hallway? And I'm like, sure, here we go. So, but I was kind of interested because he was calm, and he asked to talk to me out in the hallway. So I'm like, okay, this is a little bit different approach. He's not trying to embarrass me in front of the other kids. He's taking me out, and he seems calm. So he goes, we go out in the hallway. He shuts the door so the rest of the class can't hear. And he's like, Glenn, he says, your homeroom teacher is very curious. He says, your homeroom teacher. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And this was, probably like 10th grade or something. And he says, your homeroom teacher said that she caught you cheating your vocab homework for my class. Is that true? And I said, yes. And he's like, I've been thinking about it, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. Like, what? I mean, because I know you, Glenn. Like, you're obviously smart enough to, just blow away this class, let alone the vocab. I mean, the vocab is like the easiest part. You could probably do that in your sleep. You could rip through that paper in 5 or 10 minutes and get it all right. Like, why would you? It probably took you more time to get a paper from somebody and copy it than it would just to do it yourself. I can't figure out for the life of me why you would do that. And I went, I don't know. Like, I didn't have an answer for him. And I didn't understand this approach he was coming at me with. He wasn't demonizing me. He wasn't calling me bad. He wasn't sending me to the office. He wasn't telling me I was a loser. He was telling me that I was smart enough to do it myself, and he couldn't understand why I would resort to cheating. And I'm like, I don't know. And he says, okay. He says, well, could you do me a favor? And now he's got me. I'm like, yeah, I'm curious as all kinds of hell what this guy wants for me to do as a favor. I'm not understanding this dynamic between us, but I think I like it. And he says, could you just do me a favor and make me a promise that you won't cheat on any homework or anything in my class for the rest of the year? And I'm like, sure. I mean, that's no big deal. I mean, I knew I could do the work. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Because now he's telling me that he trusts my word. Not only am I not a loser, but he trusts me enough to make a promise and keep it if I say I'm going to. That blew my mind. I was just like, sure. And you know what? I never cheated on anything in his class for the rest of the year. And that was towards the beginning of the year. Never. The only class I didn't cheat in. But I didn't cheat in his class because I gave him my word. He treated me like a human being. And I honored my word to him. When he treated me with respect, I gave it back to him. If we want something from people, we need to give it away. And this is what I think adults don't understand. They think we're supposed to respect adults. Children are supposed to respect adults because they're adults. And I think that that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I've never agreed with it. I've never done it. It's never been like that since I was a child. It will never be like that. I will never, ever respect anybody because of their age. I will never respect anybody because of their position, because of their job, because of their education or their status. I will never respect anybody for any of those things, ever. I never have, and I never will. Because I don't think you should. If you want respect from people, give it. If they don't reciprocate with that respect, then you can set a boundary. Fine. But people think they deserve respect just because they're adults or they're older. No, you don't. You don't. You deserve respect when you give respect. That's the only time. So this turned into my personal experience podcast. You know what? And I think I'm going to leave it like that. You know, I can just not air this and I'll think about it, but most likely I will. Most likely I will because I think that it's important that, you know, like I'm speaking from my experience and my experience sucked, right? And it had some severe consequences to it for many, many years, and it almost killed me. So yeah, it's like I think this is important to talk about. And, you know, and the other reason is because, like I was saying earlier, and I'm going to wrap up with this. I was saying earlier that systems, like what we do is we put a system in place, and if it works for most, we go, it's the best we can do. And we're not paying attention to how it affects our society. You know, everybody likes the no child left behind theory, you know, when it's easy to implement. When they go, oh, let's just throw more money at it. And, you know, we'll pass some policies and then we'll have no child left behind. And everybody goes, oh, great idea. I love that. No child left behind. No child left behind. Rah, rah, rah. This is how we have to have our educational system. And then when somebody comes in like me and starts expressing the reality of what's happening to children in their life, they go, well, Glenn, I mean, what are we supposed to do? Create a system that works perfectly for everyone? And they rationalize why. It's like, oh, so children left behind is okay now? I thought it was rah, rah, no children left behind mentality. You like it when it's convenient and it's easy for you and it doesn't mess with your life that much. But when you have to stop and go, you know what? I'm a teacher or a principal, or, you know, and I don't think it's all their fault. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. I preach radical responsibility. So I think if you can't be a good teacher, if you can't handle the system, then you should get out. And I'll say that about any job: life coaching, spiritual advising, teaching, nursing, business, whatever. If you can't handle what you need to do to be respectful towards other people in your job because it's too toxic an environment for you, then get out and find another way to make a living. That's my radical responsibility speech. But, you know, if it's a policy change that they don't actually have to do, or we can throw some money at it and pretend that we care, everybody's on board. But then all of a sudden, when you have to go into work and you got to go, well, I need to actually understand child psychology and start interacting with the problem children different, and not act like they're just a dysfunctional little person and they're going to be a loser for the rest of their lives. So they're just inconveniencing me while I'm trying to teach all the good kids. And instead of needing to go in and do the hard work to really look at yourself and say, wow, you know what, I could be doing better. I could actually change the way I interact with children. I didn't realize it was affecting them like this. I didn't realize what was happening. I'm just going to work trying to make a living. I wasn't noticing that these kids that I'm talking down to on a daily basis, every time I do, it's like punching them in the face with a low self-esteem shot. And then wondering why they don't get better, why they just become more and more troublemakers. You know, it's the same reason that, like, the anti-bullying stuff is another example. It's ridiculous. Anti-bullying. We have this big anti-bullying thing. That's not how it works. Everything we declare war on, everything we put a bunch of energy against, it expands. It's just everything's energy. We declare war on drugs, there's more drugs than ever. War on poverty, more poverty than ever. War on bullying, more bullying than ever. This is what happens. Everything is energy. The universe doesn't understand against. So if we put energy towards something, it just understands topic and energy. So topic is bullying, not anti-bullying, doesn't understand pro or against, just understands topic. Bullying, more energy. Okay, so bullying expands. And then what's our solution to anti-bullying, right? Our solution to anti-bullying is get rid of the bullies. No tolerance. We're not going to have any tolerance for the bullies. So what we do is we take these bullies that are having emotional difficulties and lashing out and need help. What we're doing is we're punishing them. Negative consequences for negative actions, which doesn't work. So then they go to another school, or they go to a school with a bunch of other troubled kids that are taught that they're losers. And then we wonder why we have more people in prison. You see, it's just, and we stand up and we go, I'm against bullying. I'm a good person. I want to save the poor victims of bullying. Well, that's a wonderful idea. But what if we actually went after the problem instead of treating the symptom? The symptom is that the person that's bullying, we are never going to be free of bullies. We're never going to diminish the number of bullies by punishment. It's not going to happen because it doesn't solve the problem. And we haven't figured that out yet. Of course we figured it out. We have studies that prove this stuff. But we're too freaking inconvenient as a society to take this shit seriously and go, oh, maybe we should actually implement some sort of changes that actually addresses the problem. No, it's easier just to label the bullies as dysfunctional jackasses and throw them off into society, reinforcing that they're losers, and then wonder what happens when they become adults and they're beating their wives and their kids. Geez, I don't know what's wrong with these people. What's wrong with these people is that they were little children once. And they couldn't fit in. They didn't understand. There was something wrong. Maybe they came from a poor home life. I didn't. You know, that's the kicker. I didn't come from a poor home life. I had a very good home family life. When I was in school, I actually had a very happy childhood. I had great friends in my neighborhood playing all the time. It was wonderful. I mean, there was some bullying in the neighborhood too that I had to deal with, but so it wasn't pure joy. That's a whole nother story. But it was the school system that really messed me up. And I think if we can look at this, and it's not just, it's not me as an isolated experience, I'm not one kid. Maybe I'm more at the extreme level, but I mean, this was happening to plenty of kids that I know. So instead of working with these kids who are obviously having difficulties and trying to work with them and figure out what the difficulty is and heal them, instead we just punish them or throw them out of school because we're anti-bullying. It's like, well, why don't you help the bully if they're the... Why don't we look at what the problem is? The problem is bullying, right? So wouldn't you go into the bully and try to help the bully not bully? Wouldn't that diminish bullying as opposed to just throwing them into a different school? I mean, I think you have to go to school, right? Legally until you graduate high school. Like, so where do you think these kids are going? If they're old enough to quit, okay, well, they're off on the street. Congratulations. That's really a good head start in life for these kids. If they're not, then they just go to another school and another school and another school. And you know where they end up? They end up at the school where all the other kids end up that got thrown out of 4 schools. So now they're in basically a prison atmosphere for children, learning how to become better criminals. That's all that happens in prison and these treatment centers or whatever the hell they're called. They just learn from other kids that are worse than them how to be worse. And we think that this doesn't affect society. This isn't a victimless problem, and I think we have to start taking it a little bit more seriously. If we expect to have any type of functional society, society is getting more and more dysfunctional, and this is part of the main reason. It's through their formative years that this is happening. So that's my take. I think 25% of, and 25%, like, I think I'm being reasonable. I'm saying it works for 50%, which I think that number might be high. It might be 33%, 33%, 33%. Most things that I've tuned into kind of seem like they fall like that. But let's just say the system works for 50%, and then 25% are not being nourished. So they just they don't cause a lot of problems in society, but they don't become who they're supposed to be. That actually is a detrimental effect to society. And then you've got the other 25% at the bottom who are just major problems in society for the rest of their lives, or drug addicts or alcoholics, which are major problems in society. Hopefully at some point they woke up. I was blessed enough to at 35, thank God. So I've lived differently for the last 20 years. But I have many of my friends that committed suicide. They didn't find the solution that I found. So that's going to do it. This was a podcast where, like I said, it was a lot of me verbalizing my personal experiences and my frustrations and what I don't think is good. And I think that we need to look at. I try to give more of a balanced outlook on most of my podcast. This one, I guess, was a little personal to me, and I went down one road. But I don't see. I do want to say this. I did go down one road, right, based on my personal experiences. But I don't think I completely alienated the other side. I do understand that it's not easy for teachers. I do understand. It doesn't change the facts. Just because it's not easy doesn't mean that they don't have to do their job. My job isn't easy a lot of times. Doesn't mean I just don't do it. I don't know what that excuse is these days. Oh, well, it's really hard. Oh, well, then you don't have to do your job. Never mind. That's ridiculous. But so I understand that it's difficult, but I'm also saying that it works for 50% of the people. It's just what I've seen is the 50% that it works for, and maybe even 75% that don't even see it as a problem, really. I don't think they're really aware of how it's affecting the other 25%, and then how that other 25% affects society. Like, I think you follow that line, and then you can kind of come to your opinions, whether you should be changing things or what your opinion is. So, all right. Thank you. Peace. I'm out.